Have you ever grabbed something as innocent as a laptop for a quick recipe search, only to have your entire world shatter like a dropped glass? That's exactly what happened to me last Friday evening in our cozy apartment, where the scent of fresh coffee lingered from breakfast and the city lights twinkled outside the window like distant promises. I'd been dating Leonard for just over 2 years, and everything felt perfect. Lazy weekends, binge-watching shows, shared dreams of a house with a backyard, and that rare kind of attentiveness that made me believe I'd finally found my person after a string of heartbreaks. We were even discussing moving in together come fall, picturing merged closets and joint grocery lists. But as I opened his laptop, my phone dead on the charger, I stared at his open banking app, a recurring $1,800 payment jumping out like a red flag. Addison rent. Who was Addison? And why was Leonard funneling that much money to her every month? My heart pounded as I heard the shower turn off, steam wafting from the bathroom door. Leonard emerged, towel around his waist, his usual easy smile fading when he saw my face. "What's wrong?" he asked, but I cut straight to it. "Who's Addison, and why are you paying her rent?" The color drained from his cheeks, his eyes darting like a cornered animal. He sat on the edge of the bed, sighing deeply, and admitted she was his ex from before we met. Not just any ex, they were still close friends, and he'd been covering her full rent for years, including every single month of our relationship. No romance anymore, he swore, just support for someone in need. But when I pressed about how often they talked, he confessed, almost daily. Daily chats with an ex he'd never mentioned. The room spun, the air thick with betrayal. I demanded to know if he'd ever planned to tell me. His response? He didn't think it was relevant since it was purely financial help for a friend. Financial? That was over $43,000 during our time together. Money he'd claimed was tight when we'd skip fancy vacations or split date bills for equality. I'd felt guilty suggesting pricier outings, thinking we were building a future on equal footing, while he was secretly bankrolling another woman's life. The hypocrisy burned. "Get out," I said, my voice steady despite the tears welling up. He tried explaining, something about context, but I didn't care. Hiding this for 2 years, emotional ties and all, was unforgivable. He gathered his things, protesting that I was overreacting, but the door slammed behind him, echoing my shattered trust. That night, my phone exploded with his texts. Apologies, pleas that I'd misunderstood, promises to explain. I blocked him, curling up on the couch with a blanket that still smelled like his cologne, questioning every sweet moment we'd shared. The next day, he showed up at my office with roses, their petals wilting under the fluorescent lights as co-workers whispered. "Please just talk to me," he begged, but I refused, my manager intervening to escort him out. Humiliating, but necessary. He even reached my friends, begging them to mediate, but they shut him down, loyal as ever. Samantha texted later, "You did the right thing." He always seemed too polished. My sister Holly was more cautious, suggesting over our phone call that maybe there was more to the story, urging me to hear him out for closure. Her words nagged at me as I scrolled through old photos of us, spotting signs I'd missed. His guarded phone, stepped-out calls. Was I stupid for trusting? 3 weeks of radio silence later, curiosity won. I unblocked him, his messages flooding in, the latest pleading for a meeting with documentation to clarify. Against better judgment, I agreed to coffee the next day, not for reconciliation, but to understand how I'd been so blind. As I lay awake that night, the clock ticking mockingly, I wondered if this would bring peace or just more pain. The city's hum filtered through my apartment window, a dull roar that matched the chaos in my head as I sat cross-legged on the couch, clutching a mug of tea, gone cold. Leonard's betrayal had cracked open our 2-year relationship like a dropped mirror, and I was still picking up the shards. Blocking his number had felt like a clean break, but the silence left room for doubt to creep in, gnawing at me like a persistent itch. Had I missed signs? Was I too quick to cut him off? The $1,800 monthly payments to Addison, his ex, his friend, totaled over $43,000. A fortune he'd hidden while we split dinner bills and skipped vacations for budget reasons. The hypocrisy stung worse than the lie itself, and I spent days replaying our relationship, searching for clues I'd overlooked. My friends were my lifeline. Samantha came over with wine and takeout, her bluntness grounding me. "He's a liar, plain and simple," she said, chopsticks waving over lo mein. "You trusted a guy who was too perfect. Red flag." I nodded, but Holly's voice echoed in my mind, her phone call from yesterday replaying. "What if there's context you don't know?" she'd asked, her tone gentle but probing. Maybe he had a reason. I snapped back that hiding a daily friendship and massive financial support for an ex was reason enough, but her words lingered, sowing seeds of curiosity. What could justify 2 years of secrecy? I spent hours scrolling through our old texts, noticing moments Leonard had been cagey, stepping out for work calls during movie nights, angling his phone away when notifications buzzed. I'd brushed it off, chalking it up to trust, but now those memories felt like betrayals. My coworker Jenna, over lunch at the office cafeteria, shared a story about her ex hiding a gambling debt, urging me to move on. "Guys like that don't change," she said, her fork stabbing a salad. But Holly's hesitation kept me up at night, the city's neon glow outside my window, a restless companion. What if I'd walked away without the full story? After 3 weeks of silence, I unblocked Leonard's number, my thumb hovering over the button like it might burn me. His messages flooded in: apologies, please, a request to meet with documentation to explain. I agreed to coffee, not out of hope but a need to understand how I'd been so fooled. The next morning, I woke with a knot in my stomach, barely touching my toast. Holly offered to come, suggesting she sit nearby for support, and I agreed, grateful for her steady presence. The coffee shop smelled of roasted beans and cinnamon, its chatter a backdrop as I steeled myself for Leonard's arrival. What kind of documentation required a folder? Was this another layer of lies? I spent the day before our meeting dissecting our relationship with friends. Samantha dug through Leonard's social media, finding nothing. No trace of Addison, no hints of his double life. "He's good at covering tracks," she muttered, scrolling on her phone. My neighbor Tara stopped by with cookies, sharing her own tale of a cheating ex. "Closure's overrated," she warned, her voice soft. "Sometimes it just reopens the wound." But I needed answers, not to forgive, but to close the chapter. I texted Holly, confirming she'd be at the coffee shop, her table a safe distance away. As I lay in bed that night, the city's pulse thudding through the walls, I wondered if Leonard's explanation would clarify anything, or just deepen the hurt. The morning of the meeting, my nerves were raw. I dressed carefully. Jeans, a crisp blouse, nothing to suggest I was softening. The coffee shop was crowded, the clink of mugs and hiss of the espresso machine grounding me as I waited. Leonard's folder intrigued me, but I braced for more excuses. Holly's presence nearby would keep me steady, her loyalty a contrast to Leonard's deceit. Whatever he said, I'd walk away knowing I'd faced the truth, no matter how ugly. The scent of coffee lingered as I gripped my phone, ready to hear him out, but already certain this was the end. The coffee shop buzzed with morning chatter, the aroma of fresh espresso swirling around me as I sat at a corner table, my hands clenched around a lukewarm latte. Holly was nearby, pretending to read a book, her presence a quiet anchor as I waited for Leonard. My stomach churned, not from hunger, but from the weight of what I was about to hear. His texts had promised documentation to explain the $1,800 monthly payments to Addison, his ex, and their daily contact. Secrets he'd kept for our entire 2-year relationship. I wasn't here to forgive him. I needed to understand how I'd been so blind, how the man I'd planned a future with could hide such a massive part of his life. Leonard walked in, his usual confidence replaced by a nervous hunch, carrying a plain manila folder. He sat across from me, his eyes searching mine for a hint of softness I didn't have. "Thanks for coming," he said, voice low, and I nodded, giving him 30 minutes to explain, no interruptions. He opened the folder, sliding over medical records. Addison had multiple sclerosis, diagnosed 5 years ago, he said, her condition worsening to the point she couldn't work full-time. He'd started paying her rent when her symptoms first hit, a gesture to keep her stable. I stared at the papers, the dates and diagnoses looking legitimate, but my question burned. "Why didn't you tell me? Helping a sick friend seems like something you'd share with your girlfriend." His face tightened. "Other girlfriends left when they found out," he admitted. "I was scared you'd do the same." I scoffed, pointing out that multiple exes leaving over this should have been a clue to be honest from the start. His secrecy wasn't protection, it was cowardice. He nodded, agreeing he'd mishandled it, but there was more. He confessed to visiting Addison monthly, those business trips and friend reunions I'd never questioned. My jaw clenched, the betrayal deepening. Then came the real shock. He pulled out an insurance form listing dependents, Addison and a 6-year-old boy named Ben. "He's my son," Leonard said, his voice barely audible. The coffee shop seemed to tilt. A son? 2 years together, talks of marriage, and he'd hidden a child? I couldn't speak, my mind racing through every moment I'd trusted him. He explained that he and Addison had broken up before she found out she was pregnant. They tried to reconcile for Ben, but split for good when he was a year old. After her MS diagnosis, Leonard promised financial support, covering her rent to ensure Ben's stability. But he only saw Ben during those monthly visits, avoiding calls to keep me in the dark. "You hid your own kid to lie to me?" I asked, my voice shaking. He nodded, eyes down, saying he didn't want to lose me. Holly's shadow shifted at her table, her presence steadying me as I processed this. I asked if Addison knew about me. Leonard claimed she did, that he'd told her early on about our serious relationship. I wasn't sure I believed him. His lies were piling up like receipts. He showed me a notebook, filled with drawings and stories about Ben, a record of their limited time together. The pages were tender, detailing Ben's first words, his favorite toys, moments Leonard clung to. It was heartbreaking, but it didn't erase the deception. "You're not a deadbeat dad," I said, "but you chose to hide him. That's not love, it's control." I stood, needing air, and Holly followed me outside to a bench, the morning chill biting my skin. She didn't say much, just listened as I vented about Leonard's double life. "What kind of father hides his kid?" I asked, tears stinging. Holly wondered if Addison's illness complicated things, but I couldn't see past the lies. Back inside, I told Leonard I needed more, Addison's side of the story. To my surprise, he agreed, offering her number, but warning he'd text her first. I left, the folder's weight in my bag matching the heaviness in my chest. That night, staring at the city lights from my balcony, I debated contacting Addison. Closure felt elusive, but I needed to know if Leonard's story held up, or if there was another layer to this mess waiting to unravel. The city's neon glow pulsed outside my window, a restless rhythm matching the churn in my gut as I sat on my couch, phone in hand, scrolling through Addison's Instagram. Leonard's revelation about his son, Ben, and the $1,800 monthly rent payments had left me reeling. But his story, Addison's MS, his fear of losing me, felt like half-truths stitched together with desperation. I needed more than his tearful notebook of fatherly moments to make sense of 2 years of lies. Holly's advice echoed, "Get the full picture." So I turned to social media, searching for Addison, hoping her online life would reveal what Leonard wouldn't. Her public profile was a goldmine, photos of her with a little boy who looked like Leonard's mini-me, smiling at parks, birthday parties, and cozy dinners. But what stopped me cold were the posts with another man, Edwin, captioned with hearts and phrases like "date night with my love" and "3 years with this amazing man." I froze, my thumb hovering over a photo of Addison and Edwin, arms around Ben, labeled "my bonus dad." 3 years? Engaged for 8 months, according to a post with a ring emoji? Leonard had never mentioned Edwin, yet he was still paying Addison's entire rent while she built a new life. My mind raced. Why? Was he still in love with her? Was she manipulating him? I called Holly, my voice shaking as I showed her the posts on my laptop, the screen's glow illuminating our confusion. "If Edwin's so involved, why's Leonard footing the bill?" I asked. Holly frowned, suggesting Edwin might not earn enough to cover Addison's medical bills or Ben's needs. "Maybe," I said, but the math didn't add up. Leonard's secrecy felt deliberate, not just protective. I spent the night digging deeper, cross-referencing dates on Addison's posts with Leonard's business trips. A photo of her and Ben at a zoo matched a weekend he'd claimed he was at a conference. Another, a beach day with Edwin, aligned with a friend reunion. Each discovery was a fresh cut, proof of how thoroughly he'd played me. My apartment, once our haven, felt tainted, the scent of his cologne lingering on the throw pillows like a ghost. I texted Samantha, venting about Edwin's role, and she replied, "Sounds like Leonard's buying his way into their lives." Tara, my neighbor, stopped by with coffee, urging me to confront him. He's not just hiding a kid, he's hiding a whole world, she said, her eyes sharp. Holly pushed me to meet Leonard again, to show him the Instagram printouts and demand answers about Edwin. I agreed, setting up another coffee shop meeting, the same one where Holly could sit nearby, her presence a safety net. But first, I wanted Addison's perspective. I texted her, heart pounding, introducing myself as Leonard's ex and asking to talk. She replied instantly, expecting my message since Leonard had warned her. We set a meeting for the next afternoon at a cafe near her neighborhood. I barely slept, the city's hum a mocking lullaby as I imagined confronting her. Would she confirm Leonard's story or reveal another layer of deception? The morning of the meeting, I was a wreck, skipping breakfast as my stomach twisted. I declined Holly's offer to come, needing to face Addison alone. The cafe was quieter than my usual spot, with soft jazz and the clink of mugs creating a deceptive calm. Addison was already there, thin and pale but striking, her dark hair pulled back. No Ben, no Edwin, her eyes wary but open. I sat, my printouts tucked in my bag, and started with the basics. Leonard's payments, Ben, her MS. She nodded, confirming his story about her diagnosis and his rent support since her symptoms worsened. But when I mentioned Edwin, her face tightened. He's my fiancé, she said, and he's great with Ben. Leonard knows about him. I pressed about the rent. Why accept it when she had Edwin? She sighed, admitting Edwin's music gigs barely covered his own bills, let alone hers and Ben's. Leonard's money was a lifeline, especially with her medical costs. But she claimed she'd tried to reduce his support, especially after her engagement, only for Leonard to insist, saying he'd be hurt if she refused. Her voice wavered, a mix of gratitude and discomfort. I showed her the printouts, pointing to her bonus dad captions. If Edwin's so involved, why's Leonard still paying everything? I asked. She hesitated, then said Leonard wanted to ensure Ben's stability, but her eyes flicked away, hinting at something unsaid. As I left, the cafe's warmth fading into the chilly afternoon, I felt more lost than ever. Someone was lying, and I was determined to find out who. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across my apartment floor. The city's pulse a faint hum as I sat with a glass of wine, trying to untangle the mess of Leonard's and Addison's stories. My meeting with Addison at the cafe had left me with more questions than answers. Her words about Edwin and Leonard's insistence on paying her rent swirling in my mind like the Merlot in my glass. The Instagram posts, with their cozy images of Edwin as Ben's bonus dad, clashed with Leonard's tearful claims of being a devoted father, limited by Addison's restrictions. Someone was bending the truth, and I was done being the fool caught in their web. Holly's text buzzed my phone. Meet Leonard again, show him the posts, get the real story. I agreed, setting up another coffee shop meeting, the same one where Holly could sit nearby, her presence a steady hand on my shoulder. I spent the evening poring over Addison's words, replaying her hesitant glances. She'd confirmed Leonard's rent payments started with her MS diagnosis, but her claim that she'd tried to reduce them felt off, like a rehearsed line. Why would Leonard insist on paying $1,800 a month if Edwin was in the picture? Was he clinging to Addison, or was she leveraging Ben to keep the money flowing? My apartment, once filled with memories of Leonard's laughter, now felt like a stage for his lies. The scent of his old hoodie on the couch a bitter reminder. I texted Samantha, venting about the contradictions, and she replied, "He's probably playing both of you. Confront him hard." Tara, dropping by with leftover cupcakes, agreed, "He's hiding something bigger. Don't let him wiggle out." The next day, I walked into the coffee shop, the familiar clink of mugs and espresso hiss grounding my nerves. Holly sat at a corner table, her book a prop as she watched. Leonard was already there, his manila folder looking worn, his eyes heavy with exhaustion. I didn't waste time, sliding the Instagram printouts across the table, Addison and Edwin, smiling with Ben, captioned with love and commitment. "Why didn't you tell me she's engaged?" I asked, my voice sharp. "If Edwin's playing bonus dad, why are you still paying her entire rent?" His face crumpled, not with surprise but resignation, like he'd been caught in a lie he'd hoped to avoid. He sighed, admitting he knew about Edwin's 3-year relationship with Addison, even her engagement 8 months ago. "Edwin's a musician, barely scraping by," he said. "I pay the rent to keep Ben in a stable home, especially with Addison's health." I pressed, Why not child support, a normal co-parenting arrangement? He claimed it wouldn't cover her medical bills or Ben's needs, echoing Addison's story. But then he shifted, his voice low. There's more. Addison limits my time with Ben. He explained that when her MS worsened, she became paranoid about losing Ben, demanding he agree to limited visits, 1 day a month, in exchange for accepting his financial help. He showed me texts from last year, him begging for more time with Ben, Addison dodging or refusing with excuses like school events or her health. I stared at the messages, the timestamps matching the period he'd lied about business trips. Why not fight for custody? I asked. He hesitated, saying he feared Addison would cut him off entirely or move away, stressing her MS might not handle a legal battle. He pulled out his notebook again, pages of Ben's drawings and stories, his handwriting shaky with longing. I didn't abandon him, he insisted. I'm stuck in her rules. His words tugged at me, but the lies, 2 years of hiding a son, kept my anger sharp. You chose to hide him from me, I said. That's not her fault. I stepped outside, needing air, the city's chill biting my cheeks as Holly joined me on a bench. What if Addison's manipulating him? She asked, her breath visible in the cold. Holding Ben hostage for money? It was possible, but Leonard's secrecy was still his choice. Back inside, I told him I needed to hear from Addison directly, without his filter. To my surprise, he nodded, offering her number again, promising to tell her I'd reach out. I left, the folder's weight in my bag matched by the confusion in my heart. That night, I texted Addison, my fingers trembling as I typed a polite request to meet. Her quick reply, "I was expecting you," sent a shiver through me. As I lay in bed, the city's lights flickering outside, I braced for another layer of this tangled truth to unravel. The cafe near Addison's neighborhood smelled of fresh pastries and roasted coffee, but the warmth did little to ease the knot in my stomach as I walked in, clutching my purse with the Instagram printouts tucked inside. The city's morning bustle faded behind the glass doors, leaving only the soft clink of mugs and murmured conversations. Addison sat by the window, her pale face framed by dark hair, her eyes cautious but not hostile. I'd come alone, declining Holly's offer to tag along, needing to face this woman, Leonard's ex, Ben's mother, without a buffer. Her quick reply to my text last night had surprised me, but her claim that she'd been expecting me, tipped off by Leonard, made my skin prickle. Was this a coordinated defense, or was she as caught in his web as I was? I sat across from her, the table's wood grain grounding me as I started with the basics. I know about the rent, your MS, Ben, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. She nodded, confirming Leonard's story. Her diagnosis 5 years ago, his rent payments starting when her symptoms forced her to cut work hours. But when I brought up Edwin, her fiancé, Ben's bonus dad, her expression shifted, a flicker of unease crossing her face. Edwin's been in our lives for 3 years, she said, her voice soft. He's great with Ben, but he's a musician, so money's tight. She admitted Leonard's $1,800 monthly payments were a lifeline, covering rent and medical bills, but she claimed she'd tried to reduce his support since getting engaged, only for Leonard to insist, saying it was for Ben's stability, and he'd be hurt if she refused. I pulled out the printouts pointing to photos of her and Edwin, captioned with love and commitment. If Edwin's so involved, why's Leonard still paying everything? I asked. She hesitated, her fingers tracing the edge of her coffee cup. Leonard's always been protective of Ben's home environment, she said. He thinks it's his duty. Her words echoed Leonard's, but something felt off. Her eyes wouldn't meet mine when she spoke about his insistence. I pressed further, asking about Ben's visitation. Leonard had claimed she restricted him to once-a-month visits, holding Ben hostage for the money. Addison's face hardened. That's not true, she said, pulling out her phone to show texts inviting Leonard to Ben's school plays, soccer games, even weekend sleepovers. Offers he'd declined, citing work or other plans. The timestamps matched the texts Leonard showed me, where he begged for more time with Ben. One of them was lying, and the contradiction made my head spin. He said you limited him because of your MS, scared he'd take Ben away, I said. Addison shook her head, her voice sharp. I've never kept Ben from him. Leonard's the one who pulls back. She showed me a message from last spring, offering a weekend visit. Leonard replied he was swamped. That was a weekend he'd taken me to a vineyard, calling it a work-free escape. My stomach twisted, the memory of his hand in mine now tainted. "Did he tell you about me?" I asked, bracing for more lies. She nodded, but added, "He said it wasn't serious, asked me not to mention you if we met." That cut deep. Leonard had claimed she knew our relationship was serious. I leaned back, the cafe's chatter fading as I processed her words. Either Leonard was downplaying our relationship to keep Addison in his orbit, or she was spinning a story to justify her reliance on his money. The financial piece was the murkiest. "Why accept his rent if Edwin's in the picture?" I asked. She sighed, admitting Edwin's income was sporadic, but insisted she'd pushed for less support, only for Leonard to refuse. "He feels responsible," she said, her voice tinged with guilt. I believed her embarrassment. She seemed uncomfortable depending on him, but her story didn't fully align with Leonard's. As I left, the city's gray sky matched my confusion. Someone was manipulating the truth, and Ben, the 6-year-old caught in their games, was the only innocent one. Back home, I called Holly, recounting every detail over tea, the steam curling like my swirling thoughts. "One of them's lying about the visitation," I said, showing her the conflicting texts. Holly frowned, suggesting Addison might be using Ben to secure Leonard's money, but Leonard's secrecy was just as damning. "You need to confront him with both sides," she said. I nodded, my resolve hardening. The cafe's warmth lingered in my memory, but so did Addison's uneasy glances. I was ready for one final meeting with Leonard, to lay out every contradiction and demand the truth, no matter how ugly. The city's evening glow filtered through my apartment blinds, casting striped shadows across the floor as I sat with Leonard's USB drive in hand, its cold metal a stark contrast to the warmth of my tea mug. After meeting Addison, her conflicting story about Ben's visitation and Leonard's insistence on paying her rent had left me spinning, caught between two versions of the truth. Her texts showed her offering Leonard more time with Ben, while his showed him begging for access she denied. Someone was lying, and the USB drive Leonard had sent, delivered to my door with a note promising additional evidence, felt like my last chance to unravel this mess. I plugged it into my laptop, the screen's blue light illuminating my living room as I braced for whatever it held. Years of texts, financial records, even recorded calls, some possibly illegal, painted a chaotic picture of Leonard and Addison's tangled dynamic. I started with the texts, scrolling through years of exchanges. Early messages showed Leonard offering rent support after Addison's MS diagnosis, her gratitude clear but laced with worry about dependency. By the time Edwin appeared, 2 years ago, the tone shifted. Addison suggested reducing payments, citing her new relationship, but Leonard pushed back, insisting Ben needed a stable home. Other texts showed her inviting Leonard to Ben's events, school plays, birthdays, only for him to decline, citing work. Yet, in messages to her from the same period, he'd complain about limited access, painting her as the gatekeeper. My head throbbed as I cross-referenced dates. Some of his work excuses aligned with our date nights, like the time we went bowling, his laughter masking the lie that he was too busy for Ben. The financial records were messier. Bank statements confirmed the $1,800 monthly transfers, but there were also random deposits to Addison, $500 here, $300 there, for emergencies like medical copays or Ben's school fees. In one email, she thanked him for covering a hospital bill but asked him to stop over-helping, saying Edwin felt emasculated. Leonard's reply was curt, "I'm doing this for Ben." It felt less like fatherly duty and more like control, a way to keep her tethered. The recorded calls were the hardest to stomach. In one, Addison sounded frustrated, saying, "You can see Ben anytime, just stop making it about the money." Leonard's voice was calm but firm. "I'm not letting my son live in a dump." The power dynamic was clear. But who was playing who? I leaned back, the city's hum a distant drone as I processed the contradictions. Leonard's notebook of Ben's moments, drawings, stories, showed genuine care. But these records suggested he used money to maintain a hold over Addison's life, even as she tried to move on with Edwin. Her invitations to see Ben seemed sincere, yet she accepted his overpayments, knowing Edwin couldn't match them. Were they both manipulating each other? Ben caught in the crossfire? I called Holly, my voice shaky as I shared what I'd found. "It's like they're in a toxic dance," I said, pacing my living room, the scent of lavender from a candle doing little to calm me. Holly agreed, suggesting Leonard might be clinging to Addison through Ben, while she used the money to avoid conflict. Confront him with everything, she urged. Lay it all out. I spent the night compiling evidence, screenshots of Addison's texts, Leonard's contradictory messages, key financial records. My apartment, once a cozy retreat, felt like a war room, papers scattered across the coffee table. Samantha texted, checking in. You okay? This is nuts. I wasn't okay. The betrayal cut deeper with every file I opened. Tara stopped by with coffee, her eyes widening at the USB's contents. He's not just lying to you, he's lying to himself, she said. I nodded, my resolve hardening.